thank you for all for being here. I realized with these gatherings, like I'm actually not so, not, I wouldn't say a fan, because I love to see all those people I love and those who come out, but I'm not such a fan because for me, I like to move forward and not kind of look back and reflect and think about it. And for some reason around this time, I realized I get a little more flustered and etc. But for me, I thought it was an amazing opportunity by Rabbi Leff agreed to share words of chizuk and inspiration, and he's thankfully a very important part of my life and Gila's life and our family's life, and has been there through a lot for us. And those who at the Levaya heard him speak also, and he turned on an occasion like the Levaya too into people walked away, felt like they were just tapped into something special. So, and I also thought it was interesting that just these times, I look back at Avram Moshe a lot of times when I get comfort, as I look at it as a time, I say hugs from Hashem. And it's like when I look at all the amazing closeness that Hashem was with us during that time, that gives me chizuk, and it's nice to be able to look at that period of my life as a in those terms. And for me, I say Hashem gives us glimpses of heaven, in His handiwork a lot of times in life. And for some reason, this period in our life turned out to be one of those glimpses where He opens up the gates of heaven and shows you a little bit of His mastery on how everything works. So that's all I'm going to say. But I'm thankful to see so many people here, and my sister-in-law who helped with all the snacks and receptions, and my friends and family in the community. So again, it's more people than I thought would have come out tonight. So we're thankful to that, and I think a lot of it is a credit to Rabbi Leff, who was going to say some few words. And again, my koros tov to you, Rabbi Leff. I can't share it enough, so I will stop trying. But we're very thankful and grateful to you being in our lives, and looking forward to hearing the words that you're sharing with us all tonight.
Okay, just shy of looking back or moving on. Yohrtzeit is always a time for the neshama to move on to a higher level or whatever. So, and aside from looking back, it's also moving on. Okay, we'll try to dedicate the Divrei Torah Le'ili Nishmas Avram Moshe ben David Vigila, Zichrona Livrocha, and to mention also the grandparents, Goldbergs, who are also very, very much close to me and close to the family. I thought since we are so close to Tu B'Shvat, I thought to speak a little bit about trees and their relationship to people. The Gemara says that the connection between trees and people is based on a pasuk in Devarim. The pasuk says, "Ha'adam eitz hasada." Simply, that people are like trees. But the truth is, if you look at the context of the pasuk, it is completely the opposite. The pasuk says that when you go to battle, you shouldn't cut down the fruit trees, because ha'adam eitz hasada, are the trees then people that are coming to fight you? You're fighting against people, don't fight against trees. So the context of the pasuk is not that trees are like people, but just the opposite. The trees are not like people. So how in the world did Chazal learn from there the connection between trees and people? We'll get to that towards the end of what I'm going to tell you. Let's start with the connection between trees and people, despite the fact that the pasuk itself doesn't seem like that. Tree has basically two names, an eitz and an ilan. Start with the word eitz. It's interesting, if you vocalize the letters of eitz, ayin and tzaddik, it means something. Ayin means look, and tzaddik is a tzaddik. Even though the letter is not tzaddik, it's a tzadi, but the Gemara says it stands for a tzaddik. So ayin, look at a tree, and you'll see a tzaddik. How in the world do you see a tzaddik from looking at a tree? The Maral says that the connection between a tree and a human being is that the configuration of the tree and the configuration of a human being are very similar. Both have a trunk, both have limbs, and both have a root. So we're like a tree. There's only one problem, says the Maharal. We'd look more like a tree if we stood on our heads, because then the root would be down, and the limbs, the arms and legs would be up, and that would look like a tree. But the truth is, we look like an upside-down tree. Says the Maharal, no, we're not an upside-down tree. We're just rooted somewhere else. The tree is rooted in the physical ground. Human beings are rooted in the heavens. We basically, our main place is in the heaven. We came into this world temporarily, but our root faces where we are rooted. That our root is our head, our neshama, which is in the head, and even the root hairs are the hairs on our head. So they're rooted in the heavens, and we grow down from the heavens. It would follow then that if we were in a spiritual world, the only reason that we are standing on our feet and our heads are up is because we're in a physical world. So in a physical world, our roots have to face up towards the heavens. But it would follow that if we were in a spiritual world, then we should be like a tree, and our roots should be down, and our limbs up, and we should be on our head. And I found a medrash that says that. The medrash says the following. When Rivka Imenu saw Yaakov Avinu, her chosen, for the first time, something was very traumatic to her, and she fell off the camel. So the medrash in Paneach Raza says the following. Why did she fall off the camel? What did she see? The medrash says that after the Akedah, or at the Akedah, Yitzchak Avinu actually died. When the knife came close to his throat, his neshama fled him, and he died. And the Ribbono Shel Olam had to resurrect him. And at that point, the Malachim created the bracha that we say every day in Shmoneh Esrei, Mechaya Mesim. Baruch Atah Hashem, Mechaya Mesim. But since Yitzchak Avinu had died and was resurrected, he needed to be rehabilitated. So God put him into Gan Eden for 3 years that he should be able to rehabilitate him. At the moment that Rivka saw him, he was just coming out of Gan Eden. And, says the Medrash, as is well known, the neshamas in Gan Eden walk on their head. And he was still walking on his head. And when Rivka saw him, she was astounded. Here's her chassan walking on his head. Excuse me. She fell off the camel. Somebody told me maybe she fell off the camel because she wanted to be on her head also, to be just like the chassan. But in any case, the Medrash says clearly that in Gan Eden people walk on their head, which is perhaps another meaning to the Gemara in Bava Basra. The Gemara says that one of the Amoraim, what we call today, he was clinically dead, and he saw the next world. And they asked him what he saw. And he saw Elyonim Lamata v'Sachtonim Lamala. He saw an upside-down world. There's many different pshatim, but according to what we're saying, it's very simple. In the next world, people walk on their heads. If you can't walk on your head, don't get worried, because in that world, there's no up and down. It's all conceptual. So it doesn't mean mamish that people are upside down. It means conceptually, their root is down and their limbs are up. Also, it's possible, that's why most people are born head first, because they're coming from a more spiritual world into this physical world, so they come in basically on their heads. Based on this also, since we're in this physical world, but the truth is that our root is what's facing up and our limbs are down, if you want to maintain a spiritual posture in this world, so what you should do is cover your head, because the roots of anything are covered, and uncover your limbs, because the limbs of a tree are uncovered. So if you want to show that even though I'm standing on my feet, that's not where I'm rooted. I'm rooted in the heavens. So you want to make it clear that this is the root and that's the limb. What should you do? Take off your shoes and cover your head. Why do we do that? In the Beis HaMikdash, take off their shoes. And Ovel takes off his shoes because he wants to get closer to the spiritual world, closer to the neshama. And on Yom Kippur, we take off our shoes and we cover our head to show that this is the root and the other is only the limb. So the limb is what's uncovered and the root is what is covered. There is a time, though, when a person can be spiritual even in his shoes. The Pasuk says in Shir Hashirim, Mayofu pa'amayich bana olim bas nadiv. So the Gemara explains that Pasuk, how beautiful are your footsteps in your shoes. Bas nadiv, the daughter of the benevolent one. So the Gemara says, Mayofu pa'amayich bana olim. How beautiful are your footsteps in your shoes when you come aliyah l'regel, when you come up 3 times a year on the Yomim Tovim to Yerushalayim. Bas Nadiv, the daughter of Avram Avinu, who was the first ger, the first convert. What's the meaning? I was thinking what it means is the following. Normally, in order to show a spiritual posture, that really our root is here, and it's rooted in the heavens. And even though we're standing on the ground, that's our limb. We just happen to be temporarily in this physical world. But our root is basically in a spiritual world. So normally you would take off your shoes and cover your head. But there's a time of year when even the physical world becomes spiritual. That's called aliyah l'regel. You take your foot, which is only the limb, which is what puts you in this physical world, and you elevate it. When is that? On Yontif. On Yontif, eating and drinking and all the physical things become spiritual, become a mitzvah. So therefore, mayofu pa'amayich bana olim. On Yontif, you don't have to take off your shoes. You're beautiful in your shoes, because even the physical world is elevated to the level of spiritual. Where do we get that power to transform the physical world into spiritual? From Avram Avinu. He transformed a non-Jewish body, a physical thing, into a Jewish body, which is spiritual. So he had that power to transform the physical into the spiritual. We gained that power on Yontif to turn the physical into the spiritual too. So that is the idea of an eitz. Ayin tzaddik. Look at the tree and you'll see a tzaddik. Look at the tree, look at where the limbs are, look at the root. Understand the root is the main thing of that tree. If you cut off the limbs, the tree can still survive. If you cut off the root, there's no more tree. Now look at a human being. You'll see an inverted tree. You should understand his limbs are what put him in the physical world. His feet, his hands. But his root is his head, his neshama, and that's rooted in the heavens. So that is the significance of an eitz, an ayin tzaddik. How about a elon? An elon, the eitz, is basically the configuration of the tree. It has nothing to do with the fruit of the tree per se. It's a configuration, because even wood is called eitzim. It has nothing to do with the fruit-bearing quality of the tree. So by the eitz, you look at it, look at this configuration, and you'll see a tzaddik. An elon usually applies to fruit-bearing trees. And even though Chazal speak about ilonei srak, which are ilonos that don't bear fruit, but the same Chazal says that in the future, in Mashiach's time, kol ilonei srak will bring out fruit. So they're potentially fruit-bearing trees, except in this world they don't bear fruit. But an elon basically is a fruit-bearing tree. Famous Gemara, which many people know as a song, Elon b'meh avarechecha, peirosecha mesukim. It's talking about a fruit-bearing tree. Something interesting that I once observed about the word Elan. If you take the word Elan, and you take the aleph away and put it on the side, you're left with 3 letters. Yud, Lamed, Nun. Yud, Lamed, Nun, if you add up their numerical value, Yud is 10, Lamed is 30, is 40, and Nun is 50, is 90. The letter in the Aleph base for 90 is tzaddik. Now take the Aleph and put it back. And what do you got? An Aleph and a tzaddik, an H. But it's a different kind of H. It's an H, not with an ayin, but an H with an Aleph. And the word Aleph in Hebrew means to learn. Right? Aleph bina means to learn. Alephcha means to teach. In modern Hebrew, Aleph means to train something, usually animals, but in any case, Iluf is training, learning. So if you take the Aleph and you combine the Yud Lamed Nun together, you get an Aleph Tzaddik. Learn about the tree and you'll see what a tzaddik is. So how, by learning about fruit-bearing trees, do you know what a tzaddik is? I understand looking at a tree can give you an idea of what a tzaddik is, where his roots are, where his limbs are. But how about learning about the fruit-bearing quality of a tree? How does that tell you anything about a tzaddik? The answer, I think, is the following. The Meiri says that Olam Haba is the fruit of Olam Hazeh. It's not a different world. It's the fruit of this world. What does that mean? There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says, Yofa sho'achas shel koras ruach ba'olam haba mikol chayei olam hazeh. 1 second of peripheral pleasure in the next world is greater than all the pleasure of this world. What does that mean? Peripheral pleasure means, the Bali Musar say, if there's a banquet being prepared and you're not invited, and you can't even get into the banquet hall, the most you can do is walk on the outside of the hall and hear and smell the aroma of the food that's being cooked. That's it. That's the extent of the pleasure you can get from this banquet. That's called peripheral pleasure. 1 second of that pleasure of Olam Haba, not the main pleasure, just the peripheral pleasure, is greater than all the pleasure of this world. What does that mean? Take every pleasure that anyone ever had since the beginning of this world, since Adam and Chava, till Yemos HaMashiach. Any pleasure that anyone had, put it all together, and that amount of pleasure is nothing compared to 1 second of peripheral pleasure of the world to come, which seems to imply this world is not too important. And yet, the Mishnah goes on, Yofa sho'achas shel tshuva ma'asim tovim b'olam hazeh mikol chayil mabah. That 1 second of tshuva and ma'asim tovim in this world is greater than the whole next world. That Mishnah seems to tell me that this world is nothing compared to the next. This world is the ikr, and the next world is nothing. So which is it? It's the same Tana said both of these Mishnayos. The answer is it depends on your perspective of this world. According to one perspective, this world is not important at all. According to another perspective, this world is very important. What are those two perspectives? The first perspective is what I saw on a T-shirt in New York many years ago, that they were selling like hotcakes. It said, the one who has the most toys when he dies wins. What does that mean? Toys are things that give you pleasure. Things, objects, experiences, they're all toys. When you're little, the toys are little. And when you get bigger, the toys get bigger. And this life is, you're born, and you're supposed to amass as many toys as you can have, meaning have a pleasurable life. And whoever has the most toys by the time they die wins the game. He had a successful life. Now, I was looking for an asterisk, what exactly you win at that point since you're no longer here. And then I heard of a woman in Los Angeles who before she died requested to be buried not in a casket but in a Rolls Royce. And to the chagrin of her heirs, she won the court battle, and she was buried in her Rolls Royce. Now, she had the biggest, most expensive toy. She got to be buried in it. What exactly it did for her, I'm not sure. At that point, I'm sure her gas mileage was great because she wasn't going anywhere. But So she had the biggest toy. So she had a successful life. If that is what you consider life, the moment you're born till the moment you die, and how many toys you can fill in between, then life in this world is very, very depressing. Because you can compare it to the following. Imagine a person standing outside the delivery room, waiting for news of his wife's impending birth, and the doctor comes out and says, I have very, very sad news for you. Your wife just gave birth to a baby, but the baby was born with an incurable disease from which it was surely will die. The father says to the doctor, give me hope. There's a cure. No, there's no cure. You're looking for a cure. Now we gave up. Somebody survived miraculously without a cure. Never. So I never heard of this terrible disease. No cure. You're not looking for a cure. No one ever survived miraculously. The doctor says, you see, when your child was born, he contracted the disease called life. Now, we don't know how long it's going to take, right? Some people have survived 90, 100 years. We don't know how long it's going to take. But one thing's for sure. Whoever contracted the disease called life when they were born eventually succumbed to it. The truth is, if you think about it, that's what life is. You're born. If we know how long we're all going to live, in Yohrtzeit Hashem, we'll all live 120 happy, healthy years. So figure out how many seconds in 120 years. Very simple. Multiply 120 by 365. Multiply that by 24. Multiply that by 60. And multiply that by 60. And you get a big number. Put that on a digital display. Put it up in the delivery room. And as soon as you're born, push the button. What happens? The numbers start going down towards zero. So that's it. You're born, you begin to die. Right? That's what it says. That's the life of Rishoyim. Rishoyim b'chayehem nikroyim mesim. Most people translate that to mean wicked people, when they're alive, are considered dead. But I think it means something else. Mesim can be a noun. It can be a verb. Rishoyim b'chayehem, Rishoyim, as they live, nikroyim mesim. They're called dying, because that's it. They're born, they die. That's it. They're beginning to die. It's a countdown. But that is not our philosophy of life. According to that philosophy, life in this world is very, very unimportant. But our philosophy of life is life doesn't start when you're born, and it doesn't end when you leave this world. This is a very small part of a person's life. Life began for all of us when our neshamos were created on the first or second day of creation. And we will go beyond this world and live eternally. So why do we have to live this world for? Because the Rabbanu Shalom, as the Chazal tell us, who's the ultimate good, wanted to shower a creation that could receive that good with that ultimate good of his presence. That's called Olam Haba. That's the world to come. Tzadikim yoshvim v'atroseim b'rasheim v'nehenem miziv hashchina. Tzadikim sit and they bask in the pleasure of God's presence. So God could have created a world to come, created neshamos, had a relationship with them eternally, and that would have been the purpose of creation. Why do you have to create this world for? So the rabbis tell us that what we can understand about that, we can understand why it can't be differently. But we have to understand from what we experience that people appreciate more what they earn than what they get for free. Not only that, they appreciate what they create more than what they earn. Right? If somebody gave you a very plush reclining chair for a present and you sat on it, you'd appreciate it. But if you had to go work and earn the money to buy that chair, you'd appreciate it even more. And if you made the chair from scratch, you'd appreciate it even more. So we don't, in order that our reward in the world to come, which is that relationship with God, should be totally appreciated, we have to create it. So God put our neshamas in this physical world, and he said, now you create the relationship with me instead of me creating it with you. And we do that every second of our lives. Not just when we're doing mitzvahs or averas. If we do the things the Torah says are godly, then we make our neshama more godly. If we do things that are ungodly, we make our neshamas less like God. And the end result is our neshamas have that connection to God because we created that connection. And that can be every second. Because the Torah and mitzvahs are only a guideline of what kind of things are godly and what kind of things are ungodly. But everything a person does in this world, eating, drinking, entertainment, everything, can be done in a godly way, and then you make your neshama more like God, and your relationship is a greater relationship, or you make your neshama less like God, and the relationship after you leave this world is a less of a relationship. So, according to that philosophy, every second in this world is extremely important, because every second you can create eternity, and there's no limit on eternities. There's an infinite amount of eternities. And that's why it says there was a famous or infamous sinner who in 1 second something changed his whole life. And he repented. And it was so intense that he died. And a heavenly voice resounded, Ashrecha Rebbe Elazar ben Dordoi, Shemasukin la'olam haba, Shemazumin la'olam haba. And Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, the Mechaber of the Mishnah, the Sadr of the Mishnah, heard this, he cried. And he said, Yesh kol na'olamo b'shah achas. It's possible for a person to earn his world to come in 1 second. So the tells the Rosh Hashiva asked, what was he crying about? Should have been elated. You can get your world to come in 1 second. He was crying because he realized you could do it every second. There's no limit on how much closeness you can have with God. It's infinitely. There's an eternal, infinite amount of levels. And a person every second can get a greater level. And how many seconds do we let just slip through our fingers? So, but on the other hand, if your philosophy of life is the first one, how much toys you can amass between birth and death, then there is no value to any second of life. Because how much enjoyment can you have in a second? Can you eat a steak in a second? No. What can you do in a second? So you need a lot of seconds. And even that is not guarantees that you're going to enjoy this world, because even if you have a long time to live, but you're in a coma in the hospital and can't do anything, so your quality of life is very low. So you really need two factors, length of life and quality of life. And then life may be important, but that's not our philosophy. And therefore every second of life is valuable. So according to the Torah philosophy, 1 second of tshuva and ma'asim tovim in this world is greater than the whole world to come. Because in the world to come, you're stuck with what you have. That's it. And in this world, you can keep creating more and more. And according to the other philosophy, that this world is just a place to amass pleasure now, not to create something for the future, then no second is important. And all the pleasure of this world is nothing compared to 1 second of the world to come. And therefore, that's what the Meiri says. Depends on your philosophy of life, but the philosophy of Torah is that the world to come is the fruit of this world. In this world you plant the seeds, in the next world you reap what you planted in this world. That's called the philosophy of fruit. And it's interesting that Avraham Avinu understood that that is one of the basic milas of Eretz Yisrael. It says that before Avraham was told, Lech Lecha, before he was told to come and live in Eretz Yisrael, he took a pilot trip, 5 years before Lech Lecha. And he went around the world looking for a place that if he would have children, where he would want to bring them up. He went to Aram Naraim in Chutz La'aretz, and he saw a bunch of idol worshippers eating, drinking, and partying. And he said, God, this is not for me. This is not where I want to live. He came to Eretz Yisrael, and he saw a bunch of idol worshippers planting, plowing, and harvesting. He said, this is the place. Now, I live on a moshav, so I could tell you that what Avraham Avinu was impressed with was here were people involved with agriculture, right? Probably the JNF will tell you the same thing. But it doesn't make sense. What in the world did Avraham Avinu see greater about a bunch of idol worshippers planting, plowing, and harvesting, or a bunch of idol worshippers partying? What's the difference? They're a bunch of idol worshippers. Now the idea is, Avraham Avinu saw that the atmosphere, the environment in Chutz La'aretz was conducive to the first kind of life: eat, drink, and be merry. Right? Live it up in this world, because that's what the world's all about. And in Eretz Yisrael, he saw the opposite. Even the idol worshippers, the environment gave them the idea of putting in effort now for a future benefit. Their future benefit was the fruit. But our future benefit, his children's future benefit, would be the fruit of the world to come. Two different philosophies. Immediate gratification, I want it now, or putting in effort for the future. That's the difference between Chutz La'aretz and Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is more conducive to the philosophy of the Torah, and Chutz La'aretz is more conducive to the other philosophy, to the philosophy of the here and the now. That doesn't mean that you can't live a beautiful Torah life in Chutz La'aretz. I just came back from England, beautiful communities there. But you have to go against the environmental influence. You have to fight against it. And here, you can live a non-Torah life. There's plenty of people who do it. But here you have to go against the environment to do that. Here the environment is conducive to a Torah life, and they're the opposite. I once saw that clearly. Those of you who have been here for quite a while will remember what Shavua HaSefer used to be. Shavua HaSefer used to be a week where in one central place in each city, they would bring all the publishers would bring, and booksellers would bring Sfarim and books, lay them out on tables. Right? They used to be in Gana Pamon. And people would come for a night and with their families and peruse the books and the Sfarim, which were sold on at a reduced price. And in order to be a family night out, they had cotton candy for the children and rides. Remember what's it called? Shavua HaSefer. So one year, I took my family to Shavua HaSefer in Gana Pamon here. And we spent time looking around tables, at Sfarim, at books, and the children had their things of enjoyment. And I went home, and that night I had a 1 o'clock flight to New York. So I went to the airport. 11 hours later, I was in New York. I get off the plane, and the person who met me said, I have tickets for something that's going on in Javits Convention Center today, and I have an extra ticket. Would you like to join me? I said, what exactly do you think that I'd be interested in Javits Convention Center? He said, we're having a kosher food fest. What is that? All the producers of kosher food bring their latest products, put them out on tables, and people go around and taste and peruse and see what the latest things of kosher food are. I said, look, I have nothing against kosher food. It's very nice. But I just came from Eretz Yisrael a few hours ago, and we were walking around tables looking at Sfarim. Now you want me to go around tables and look at food? There's got to be a different focus between what is in New York and what is in Yerushalayim. It's a different world. There the focus is food. Here the focus is Sfarim, right? And again, not that there's anything wrong with kosher food, but it depends. What's the ikr in your life? What's the focus of Yiddishkeit? So that is called the philosophy of fruit. So if you learn about the fruit-bearing quality of a tree, you'll know what a tzaddik is. A tzaddik is a person who puts in effort now for the future and not who's looking for immediate gratification. And then I thought there's something very interesting about the word Ilan. Aside from the fact that it comes out to be Aleph Tzaddik, but the letters themselves have an interesting symbolism. In Eretz Yisrael, in order to emphasize this idea of the fruit, the Torah gave special mitzvahs with fruit. Trumas and Maasros. There's basically 4 mitzvahs. Truma, you take the first of the crop, right? A minimum anything, right? Chazal said, a 40th, a 50th, or 60th, but Minat Torah, 1/100th, that's what we take. 1/100th, a little bit more, what's it called, than a 100th, we take from the Truma. That's the first. Take the first of the crops. And then we take Ma'aser Rishon, which is 1/10 of the crop, and that goes to the Levi. And then we take Ma'aser Sheni, that's a second tenth, and we bring that to Yerushalayim and eat it there. And then there's a third tenth that substitutes for Ma'aser Sheni in the third and sixth year of Shemitah is Ma'aser Ani. You take the Ma'aser, instead of bringing it to Yerushalayim, you give it to Aniyim. Those are the 4 mitzvahs: Truma, Ma'aser Rishon, Ma'aser Sheni, Ma'aser Ani. What's the purpose of these mitzvahs? We take off the first from the fruit to represent the fact that we always dedicate the first to Hashem. Firsts are important because they set the pattern for everything that comes afterwards. So we dedicate the first to the Rabbanu Shalom. That's Truma. And we set the pattern that this world is a place where you dedicate your efforts to the future, to having that relationship with God, and not just eat, drink, and be merry. And then we take the 10th, and we dedicate that to God too. Why? Because the 10th represents the goal. What's the final goal? Why? Because from 1, every number after 1 till 10, 2 to 9 are separate numbers. 10 takes everything and unites them into one unit. That's why a tzibur is a minyan, 10, right? In Arabic numerals, 10 is 1, 10, and 0 ones. It's a unit of 10s. Unites all the separate integers into one unit. In Hebrew also, Asara is a number to itself. After that, there's no new numbers. It's Achad Esrei, Shtei Mesrei. We add onto that unit of 10. So the goal of this world is God created the world. That's Aleph. That's 1. But then he created many things. But the goal is to take all those many things and unite them under God. That's the goal. The goal is to have that relationship with God and to unite all the many things in this world under God, a new collective one. That's 10. So now, if you have the right outlook, you dedicate the first and the 10th to God, but now you have to know how to do that. Okay, I know that I should dedicate everything to God. How do you do that? Jump up in the air? How do you do and dedicate to God? So the way of doing it, you have to learn Torah. That's Ma'aser Sheni. You bring up your Ma'aser to Yerushalayim. And the Torah says, L'man tilmad l'yiras Hashem Elokecha. By bringing Ma'aser to Yerushalayim, you learn how to fear and serve God. Says Tosas, how do you learn? By eating Ma'aser Sheni Yerushalayim. Because in Yerushalayim, where all the yeshivas, the Sanhedrin, the Kohanim, the Leviim, so you have to spend time eating your Ma'aser Sheni Yerushalayim. You come in contact with all these people. And you have to do something here, so you sit and learn. Go to yeshiva and learn. Go to a seminary and learn. So by bringing your Ma'aser to Yerushalayim, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, so you learn how to affect that philosophy you got from dedicating the first and the 10th. Now you know how to put it in practice. That's Ma'aser Sheni. But you can't only worry about yourself. You have to inspire other people also to the same goals. That's Ma'aser Ani. You give it to people who need your help. So that are the 4 mitzvahs that have to do with trees and with fruit. Now let's see what the word Ilan represents. We said the mitzvahs are giving the first, the 10th, learning how to apply that, and giving to other people also, to people who need. The Aleph is the first. The Yud is the 10th. Lamed is Limud, learn how to do it. And Nun, the Nun represents falling. Person who can't support himself needs to be supported by others. That's why in Ani, the main letter of Ani, the middle letter is a Nun. So here we have Ilan. Aleph, right, very nice. Or a Nidava, right? So give to somebody who you need to support. So the Nun is the Meiser Ani. So you have all the mitzvahs in the word Ilan. The Aleph is Truma, the first. The Yud is the 10th, is Meiser Rishon. The Lamed is Meiser Sheni, which his purpose is Limud, to learn how to put that into practice. And the Nun is Meiser Ani, where you give it to the person who can't support himself. So the word Ilan not only hinged to this concept of Aleph Tzaddik, learn about the Elon, the fruit-bearing fruit, the quality of the tree, and you'll know what a tzaddik is. A tzaddik is somebody who's putting in effort now for the future, but the 4 mitzvahs that enhance that also spell Elon. So now we have a very good idea of how trees, both their configuration and their fruit-bearing qualities, represent people. Now let's go back to the question we started with. But the Torah says not like that. The Torah says, Ha'adam eitz hasada. What are you fighting against trees? You think trees are people? Tosfos says that even though the Gemara says, Atem kruyim Adam, the Jewish people are called Adam, and Goyim are not called Adam, but Goyim are called Ha'adam. Now, on the surface, that would seem a little bit difficult to understand, because Ha'adam is the man with a Hey Hayediyah. That should apply to Jews. And Adam Stam should apply to even to Goyim. Why does the opposite to true? Ha'adam applies to all human beings, and Adam applies to Jews. So the Tzlach, in his Hakdama, says the following. He says Adam has 2 derivations from 2 words. Either it can come from Adama, or it can come from the word Adameh, I will emulate, I'll be like. A human being comes from the earth, but he can be like God. So the non-Jewish world basically has the idea of Ha'adama. They were created from the earth. But to really be like God, that's not their potential. So only Jews have both meanings, Adama and Adameh. Whereas a Goy has one meaning, Ha'adam, the major reason of created min Ha'adama. I think there's a deeper idea. And that's the following. If you look at the psukim in the creation of man, the Torah says like this. God starts out, Na'aseh Adam b'tzalmeinu kidmusenu. Let us make man in our image, b'tzalmeinu kidmusenu. Tselem and Demus. And the Mefarshim explain, some of them, Tselem Elokim, that we're created in God's image, is that we have free choice. All other creations, angels, animals, don't have free choice. They're programmed. But we have free choice. So in that respect, God is also a free choice being, K'biyachol. God can choose whatever he wants. And we're in God's image in that respect. We have free choice. We can choose good or evil. Demus is something else. Demus means that we can emulate God and be like him. In fact, the word demus is the same letters as midos. We can have the same character traits as God. We have a mitzvah to emulate God's character traits. So the Rabbanan Shalom said, Na'aseh Adam. Let us create. Na'aseh always means the perfection of something, the asiyah. It's complete. The completion of human beings will be that they have free choice, and they'll use that free choice to be like me, to emulate my midos. Na'aseh Adam b'tzalmeinu kidmusenu. But when it speaks about how actually God created man, he didn't create him complete. That's up to us to complete. Vayivra Elokim es ha'adam. God created the man, b'tzalmo b'tselem Elokim. It only mentions Tselem. He gave us free choice. But he didn't create us finished product where we emulate God. That we have to do. So when it says Adam, it's talking about an Adam who has a Tselem and a Demus. He has free choice, and he actually uses that free choice to emulate God. That applies to the Jewish people. As a people, we have that potential more than any other nation of the nations of the world. Individual Goyim could also do that. But as a nation, we have that potential. When it says that God created man, there it says, Vayivra Elokim es ha'adam. That's ha'adam, who has free choice. He's not an animal, he's not an angel. He's a human being with free choice. But the potential to really emulate God, that wasn't created. That was something that he's going to have to do on his own. So when we refer to the Jewish people, we call them Adam, because they have the Tselem and the Demus. When we refer to the nations of the world, we call them Ha'adam. They have the Tselem, but not necessarily the potential for that Demus as a people as we have. Now let's go back to the pasuk. So it comes out that Adam, who is someone who is similar to God, and that's a Jewish people. So there, Adam is like a tree. But the Torah says, V'chi ha'adam eitz hasodeh. When it comes to ha'adam, there is not like a tree. Because a tree has to be somebody who is similar and connected to God, and somebody who is going to use this world as a means to get closer to God. So that when the Torah says, what's it called? V'chi ha'adam eitz hasodeh, it's only talking about ha'adam. True, ha'adam doesn't have those two qualities that we mentioned of being the root in the heavens and the fruit being the ikr. But Adam, Taka, he's eitz hasodeh. So we are like eitz hasodeh. But when we're fighting against Goyim, right, the Goyim are ha'adam. Is the trees like ha'adam? No. Are the trees like Adam? Yes, that's what. So, Yohrtzeit Hashem, what's it called? Each and every one of us should take a little bit of an inspiration from what Chazal say a human being should be, especially a Jew, to be like an Eitz, an Ayin Tzaddik, and an Elon, right, with all the ramifications. And if Avram Moshe's memory can bring everybody a little bit closer to the Ribono Shel Olam, he obviously didn't need all of this avoda. Right, his neshama was, for some reason, the Ribono Shel Olam decided was so pure that he was able to go and have that connection to the Ribono Shel Olam without having to live 120 years and put in a lot of effort. Could be from some previous life. No one knows. I don't know for sure. Right? You have to be a Navi to know that. And today there are no Nevi'im. Nevuah was given to children and to fools. And I'm over bar mitzvah, so if I claim to be a Navi, that would only mean one thing. And I see they agree. So Yohrtzeit Hashem, the family should have an ongoing nechama and go Michael al Chayil in good health, all of us in Yohrtzeit Hashem, and be taka like trees are supposed to be, like that Eitz and like that Elon, and Sadik Katomer Yifrach, Ke'eres Balvonon Yizge, Le Orech Yomim Tovim.